caught this article on the Boston Globe, Your Vote Won't Help Restore Abortion Rights, which is certainly a thought-provoking or provocative headline. It's written by David Daley. He's a senior fellow at fairvote.org. He's also the author, in fact, he's been on the program before, of the book Rat F to Why Your Vote Doesn't Count and Unrigged, How Americans Are Battling Back to Save Democracy, also the former editor-in-chief at Salon.com. You can tweet him at Dave Daley #3 or at Fairvote. Dave, welcome back to the program. Tell us about why our vote won't help restore abortion rights.
Thanks for having me back on, Tom. The short answer is gerrymandering. What Justice Alito said in this draft opinion that is presumed likely to become the new law of the land is that it was time to return abortion to the political process in the states. The trouble is, as Justice Alito well and fully knows, that the game has already been rigged by his side in the states. Republicans rule from the minority in places like Ohio and Florida, Texas, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, where it is all but impossible for even majorities of Democrats amounting to hundreds of thousands of voters to change their elected representatives and put the other side in power. So if you cannot, if these state legislatures are wired in such a way that one side has all of the power, even when the voters are on the other side, returning the process to politics doesn't work.
Yeah, so like in Florida, where Ron DeSantis won by 33,000 votes, Donald Trump carried the state by only 51%, you note in your article here in the Boston Globe. And yet, in their House of Representatives, the Florida House of Representatives, even though the state is about 50-50 in terms of, or 51-49 in terms of people voting for Democrats or voting for Republicans, they have 78 Republicans and 39 Democrats, which is pretty mind-boggling. The Republicans hold 65% of the state house. And that's, I mean, you know, the same thing in Ohio, the same thing in Wisconsin, the same thing in Michigan, as you pointed out. So, number one, I'm assuming that in part this is something that could have been corrected by the Supreme Court long ago, but they chose not to?
That's exactly right. The U.S. Supreme Court effectively blessed the radical extreme partisan gerrymandering of our states, you know, in a handful of decisions back in the last decade, especially in one in 2019, in which they closed the federal courts to partisan gerrymandering claims. And what they said then was kind of hilarious. They said, well, if voters want to do something about gerrymandering, they can elect different people to draw these maps. And the entire problem here is that the maps are drawn by politicians to lock themselves in power and to keep the voters on the other side, even huge majorities of them. And the polls on this issue haven't really budged in 2 decades. A majority of Americans want to see Roe versus Wade remain law. They do not want to see abortion rights overturned. This is the case in Florida. It's the case in Texas. It's the case in Alabama, in Oklahoma, in Ohio, in Georgia, in state after state, where legislatures are moving to restrict reproductive rights. And in all of the states where they will jump on this in the next several weeks, if this draft opinion becomes law, the polls are on the other side. Alito wants to turn it back to the political process, but that doesn't work when the game is rigged.
Right. So, two kind of issues come to mind. One is a number of blue states, a number of Democratic-controlled states have basically unilaterally disarmed. California, for example, and I know they're not the only one, I'm guessing you've got this stuff right at the top of mind, has nonpartisan commissions that draw districts that are, you know, drawn along geographic and demographic lines or population lines, basically. So they're not, you know, taking into consideration the kinds of things that you do when you gerrymander, you know, race or political affiliation or affluence or whatever. And And there are some folks who are saying you shouldn't do that. You should, if the Republicans are going to gerrymander, you should gerrymander like crazy until you get, enough of a, because we're, the reason that everybody is saying that the Democrats are probably going to lose the House of Representatives this fall is because so many states now have so effectively gerrymandered. And when Democrats try, like in New York State, it gets struck down by a bunch of democratically appointed Supreme Court justices, state Supreme Court justices. And when Republicans try in some states and it gets struck down, they just say, screw you, we're going to do it anyway.
You're exactly right. We're watching this unfold right now in the state of Ohio, where Republicans have drawn a 13-2 map that is that has been rejected by the state Supreme Court now 4 times, and yet they are just persisting, and they have run out the clock so long that they're going to have the 2022 elections in Ohio for Congress on a map that has been declared unconstitutional. Republicans will likely win 13 of the 15 seats in a state that's probably 53-47 on a presidential breakdown, maybe 54-46. And that could shift 4 or 5 congressional seats. The balance of power in Congress right now is only 4 or 5 congressional seats. So this unconstitutional map could make all the difference for the entire country. So I think you're exactly right when you say what Democrats have done here is not enough. We have got to be thinking not just about how you fix partisan gerrymandering, which is a huge problem, but we have got to be thinking about the structure of the U.S. Senate, where it's right now 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans, even though 41 million more people nationally prefer Democratic candidates in 2020. By 2035, you are likely to have a U.S. Senate that 70% of the population lives in 30 states and has 30 senators. So when you add the filibuster in, you are giving smaller, whiter, rural conservative states an effective veto power over everything.
Right, which is the whole point of it. I mean,
exactly.
let's just be upfront about this. First of all, it seems to me that Democrats' messaging sucks on this. Nobody knows what gerrymander means. They need to stop referring to these things as gerrymanders and start calling them rigged elections.
Amen.
And so, number one. Number two, how the Republicans got their rigged elections through a court-based strategy. They took case after case after case to the Supreme Court and packed the court as heavily as they could so that they could be allowed to gerrymander. There's no mistake about it. And they also just pull out all the stops and pour massive amounts of money into state after state in the elections in the years that end with 0 or the year immediately thereafter where these maps are drawn. So what should Democrats be doing now?
They need a long-term structural game to win back power in state legislatures. They need to be really focused on 2022 governor races in these gerrymandered states like Wisconsin and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, where that governor is the only thing that hangs between a majority of voters and extreme one-sided minority rule, even in states that ordinarily tilt fairly blue. And I think it is time for us to be talking about what we're going to do to fix the United States Supreme Court, which has 6 conservative justices, 5 of them appointed by presidents that lost the popular vote, and confirmed by a U.S. Senate that lacks any
that represents a minority of America
to a majority.
Right.
And so we have to be talking about how we are going to balance and right size the federal judiciary if we want to have any hope of remaining a country in which the majority rules.
Yeah. So let's hope that Democratic leadership is listening. I'm sure they're aware of this.
The tall order.
Yeah, but it is time to take names and kick ass and call
Amen.
this election rigging, because that's exactly what it is. David Daley, his article you can find over at the Boston Globe, Why Your Vote Doesn't. I'm sorry. He's also the author of Rat F, Why Your Vote Doesn't Count, and Unrigged, How Americans Are Battling Back to Save Democracy.